At the close of the 41st millennium, the largest and greatest of the Tyranid hive fleets descended upon the galaxy. The hive mind had learnt well the lessons of its earlier invasions, and this new fleet, Leviathan, employed these teachings to the detriment of all other life it encountered. Once again it was Inquisitor Cryptman who alerted the High Lords of Terror to the new Tyrannid hive fleet, one of terrible size that he named Leviathan. Where the other hive fleets had attacked the eastern fringe, striking the galaxy edge-on as they emerged from the intergalactic void, this new hive fleet appeared to have skirted the galactic rim, and was now attacking upwards through the galactic plane. As with Kraken before, Leviathan did not focus its forces into a single killer blow, but attacked across a broad front. Leviathan's tendrils stretched across the segmentums Ultima, Tempestus, and even Solar. By the time Inquisitor Cryptman could raise the alarm, Leviathan had already advanced far, and the shadow in the warp that heralded its coming had orphaned dozens of worlds. The worlds of Valador and St. Capelline had already been lost. The Forge world of Griffon-Narth, home of the mighty War Griffin's Titan Legion, had fallen ominously silent, and the Agri world of Tarsis Ultra was embroiled in a bloody battle for survival. The morale of the Imperium's forces began to plunge as more worlds were consumed, and with every planet devoured, Leviathan grew stronger. A drastic measure. With a grim finality, Inquisitor Cryptman ordered that a galactic cordon be established. His plan was that a band of worlds should be evacuated across the path of Leviathan's main advance, with many of them razed to the ground in order to deny the Hive fleet any further raw materials for its ships. This would slow its advance long enough for battle fleets Solar and Tempestus to muster. Any worlds already under invasion within the bounds of this cordon were to undergo exterminatus just at the point when the Tyranids descended to feed upon the doomed populace. Cryptman theorized that using this method the swarms would expend great resource to claim a world, only to have every living thing upon it reduced to ash by barrages of cyclonic torpedoes and virus bombs. With one stark and callous decision, Cryptman had condemned billions of souls to extermination. To this day, it remains the single largest act of genocide ever inflicted upon the Imperium by its own forces since the Horus Heresy. Cryptman's decision to abandon hundreds of Imperial worlds in the face of the alien advance was met by howls of outrage by his peers. His butcher's bill was deemed intolerable, and many influential inquisitors called for Cryptman to be declared excommunicate traitoris. When dozens of the cleansed worlds were claimed by the ever-expanding orcs of Octarius, Cryptman's detractors cursed him for a radical, a traitor, and a fool. A Carta Extremis was issued, stripping Cryptman of his title and forcing him into exile as a criminal of the worst kind. However, the fact remained that the inexorable advance of Leviathan had slowed to a crawl. Cryptman had bought the Imperium time, that most valuable of commodities, at the expense of 100 worlds. He had resolved that the many lives he had to sacrifice would not be lost in vain, and had put into action a plan aimed not merely at slowing the advance of Hive Fleet Leviathan, but at dealing it a fatal blow. Despite being cast out of the Inquisition, Cryptman could not abandon his fight against the Hive mind. As Leviathan continued to spread its tendrils into the Imperium, he took it upon himself to harness the power of the swarm. The former Inquisitor claimed that he could not only defeat Leviathan, but in doing so he could rid the Imperium of the galaxy's native enemies. Though many of his few remaining allies labelled him a reckless menace, it could not be denied that he understood the Tyranids as no other did. But, as the Imperium would learn, understanding an enemy such as the Tyranids and controlling it are two equally impossible things. Determined to prove his theories right, Cryptman planned to use a tendril of Leviathan to eliminate the Orc Empire of Octarius. The Imperium had long been embroiled in an ever-escalating war against the Orcs in this region of space, and despite huge influxes of reinforcements, resources that Cryptman deemed would have been better served fighting the Tyranids. The Orcs were dominating the war. Cryptman's gamble was to change the balance of power forever. Enlisting aid from a squad of Deathwatch Space Marines who still had faith in him, Cryptman captured a live brood of Genestealers and then loaded them onto Perdition's Flame, a space hulk that had emerged from warp space ahead of the approaching Hive fleet. As the Tyranids awoke from stasis, Cryptman destroyed the moon of Geist, and in doing so diverted the hulk's trajectory towards the Orcs. Within weeks, the Tyranid infestation had spread to dozens of worlds. The Hive mind had sampled a new feeding ground, and in response, a tendril of Leviathan veered towards Octarius. At first it appeared that Kryptman's gamble had succeeded. As tyranids and orcs fought an endless war across the sector, the Imperium was content to let the alien forces wipe each other out. However, both orcs and tyranids are races that thrive on war. Greenskins flocked to join the fight from light years around, and every orc devoured provided yet more biomass to feed the growing tyrannid swarm. It soon became apparent that Kryptman had only delayed the inevitable, for whichever aliens emerged from the conflict as victors would do so stronger than ever before.